Remember when they told you family was the safest sanctuary on earth? That's the cruelest deception ever spoken. The most devastating falsehood I've ever encountered. Because it was within my own home, in my childhood sanctuary adorned with dolls and wall drawings, that my brother committed acts even the devil would recoil from. And my father believed that boy could do no wrong. Even today, at 73 years old, I can still hear that harsh voice declaring, "Spinning tales again, girl, spinning fantasies," as if the life that blossomed within me at 14 was mere imagination. My name is Jessica Randall, but you may call me Miss Jessica. I entered this world in 1951 here in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, during an era when children possessed no voice, especially girls. Girls were expected to remain silent, comply, and show gratitude. Today, perched on the porch of my modest yet honest little home on this sweltering July afternoon, I've chosen to share a story I've concealed for nearly 6 decades. It's not a beautiful tale, mind you. It's the kind that churns your stomach, that makes you want to shield your ears, but it demands telling because I know countless girls are enduring the same torment I survived, believing they're utterly alone. If you're listening right now, share in the comments where you're from. I need to know if my words are traveling far, if people across America are watching. And please, if possible, give this video a like and subscribe to the channel, because each like, each comment fortifies my resolve to keep speaking about what many prefer to bury beneath silence. I recall as vividly as yesterday the first moment I realized something was terribly wrong in my family. I must have been around 7, playing house in the yard when I heard my father's voice thundering at my mother in the kitchen. Nothing unusual there, he was perpetually shouting, but this time felt different. "Martha, quit coddling that girl. Let her discover that in this household I command, me and Tony." Tony, my older brother, 5 years my senior to be precise. Dark-haired, tall from childhood with those emerald eyes that came from nowhere since everyone else bore brown eyes. The neighbors constantly remarked he was devastatingly handsome, destined to shatter many hearts. If only they knew the first heart he'd obliterate would be mine. My father, John Randall, was among those men born in the wrong century. He believed women existed to serve, that men never shed tears, that one male child outweighed 10 females. He labored at the nuclear plant, I'm uncertain doing what exactly, but he always returned reeking of whiskey and cigarettes. During good moods, he ignored my existence entirely. During bad moods, during those times, it was wiser to vanish. As for my mother, Martha Randall, a name that couldn't be more fitting, she was a saint. Petite, hair perpetually secured in a tight bun, hands weathered from accepting others' laundry. She tried, poor soul, tried to shield me however she could, but against my father, her efforts proved futile. "Stay silent, my child," she'd whisper, when Daddy began his tirades. "This too shall pass." The house we inhabited was one of those 3-room dwellings, a living area that served multiple purposes, a bedroom for my parents, and a cramped back room that Tony and I shared. Initially, when I was very small, we got along beautifully. He taught me to scale trees, fish in the creek flowing behind our home, to whistle melodies. But as I matured, everything transformed. It began gradually, a wandering touch here, an unsettling gaze there. I didn't truly comprehend. I was a child, you understand. I thought it normal for a brother to embrace his sister so tightly, to desire sharing the same bed despite having his own beside mine. My mother occasionally entered our room during midnight hours and discovered him in my bed. "Tony, return to your own bed, boy." But he always possessed excuses. He feared thunder, felt cold, missed being small. My father found it wonderful. Look how deeply they cherish each other. Now that's genuine family unity. And he'd pat Tony's back with pride. He was the perfect son, after all. Played baseball like him, drank like him, cursed like him, 2 peas in a pod, father and son, thick as thieves, partners in everything. I, conversely, was the burden, the girl born when they desired another boy, the walking disappointment. My father concealed nothing from anyone. This one was miscalculated, he'd inform his friends, gesturing at me. But what can you do? God willed it so. The first time I noticed something genuinely disturbing was Easter Sunday. I was approximately 9, dressed in a yellow gown my mother had sewn. The entire family gathered, uncles, cousins, the house, overflowing. Everyone complimenting how lovely I appeared, how I was blossoming into a young lady. Normal family interactions, correct? But Tony despised it. I witnessed it in his eyes, that sudden fury, that way of crushing his soda cup until his knuckles whitened. When everyone migrated to the backyard for barbecue, he pulled me aside. "Think you're so beautiful, huh?" Seeking attention. I was bewildered. Attention from whom? I was simply there, quiet in my corner, enjoying my cake slice. But he continued. "You belong to me. Hear that? Mine. I don't want to see you acknowledging." Anyone else? Mine? What did he mean? Brothers don't possess sisters. But that day, at that precise moment, something shifted. The way he observed me became different, possessive, dangerous, and I, even without truly understanding what was occurring, felt terrified. A cold fear that crept up my spine and twisted my stomach. I attempted speaking with my mother. "Mom, Tony is behaving strangely with me." She was washing dishes, hands buried in suds, her perpetually exhausted face. She paused briefly, looked at me, and I saw it. I saw that she knew. I saw that she understood. But I also witnessed the fear in her eyes, the same terror I felt. "It's all in your imagination, honey. Your brother loves you. He simply wants to protect you." And she returned to scrubbing plates with excessive force, as if she could also scrub away the truth we both recognized but couldn't voice. That's when I understood something terrible. I was alone. My father on his side, my mother too frightened to act. And there I was, trapped in the middle, a 9-year-old girl forced to confront a monster who slept in the adjacent room. Things deteriorated. He began entering the bathroom during my showers. "Forgot my towel," he'd claim, but he'd simply stand there watching. I'd shrink into the corner, attempting to cover myself with my hands, but he wouldn't depart. "What's wrong? I'm your brother. You needn't be modest around me." I started bathing clothed. Seriously, I'd enter the bathroom dressed, lock the door, and only undress inside the shower stall. Even then, he found methods. He'd force the door, claiming urgent bathroom needs. My mother would complain about the broken latch. My father blamed my carelessness. Nights were worse, much worse. He'd wait until everyone slept, then visit my room. Initially, he'd simply sit on the bed's edge, stroking my hair. "You're beautiful. You know that? The most beautiful in the family." I'd pretend sleep, squeeze my eyes shut, pray for his departure. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. When I turned 11, everything completely spiraled beyond control. Actually, it was on my birthday. My mother had prepared a simple cake, cornbread with strawberry jam. Just the 4 of us sang happy birthday. No friends, no celebration. My father gave me an old doll he'd found somewhere. "You're growing too old for this nonsense," he said. "But here you go." Tony presented me a necklace, cheap plastic, the kind sold at dollar stores. But he created a grand ceremony for my beautiful little sister. And he embraced me before everyone, an embrace lasting too long, held too tightly. I felt his hand sliding down my back, stopping where it shouldn't. I looked at my mother desperately. She averted her gaze. That night, he visited my room again, but this time was different. This time, he didn't merely observe. "You're a young lady now," he whispered in my ear. "Time to learn certain things." I was trembling so violently the bed shook. I tried screaming, but he covered my mouth. "Be quiet. If you scream, I'll tell Dad you've been fooling around with Mike from the grocery store. You know what he'll do." "To you." I knew. Of course I knew. I'd witnessed him beat my mother for far less. Once she smiled at the gas delivery man and endured a week of beatings. Imagine what he'd do if he thought I was offering myself to neighborhood boys, as he'd say. So, I remained silent. I bit the pillow and stayed quiet while my brother committed acts that even today I struggle to express. It hurt so intensely I thought I'd die. But the physical pain was nothing compared to my soul's agony, knowing this was happening and nobody would help me. The next day, I could barely walk. My mother noticed, naturally. "What's wrong, Jessica? Why are you limping?" I fabricated falling. She asked nothing more, but when Tony wasn't looking, she applied antiseptic to my wounds. Her hands trembled, silent tears streaming down her face, but she said nothing. She never did. From that night forward, it became routine. 2, 3 times. Weekly, sometimes more. He'd wait until everyone slept, then come. I learned to detach myself. It's remarkable how the mind can escape the body when necessary. I was visibly withering. I stopped eating properly, stopped speaking. At school, teachers would ask if everything was fine at home. I'd nod yes. What could I say? Who would believe me? Tony was everyone's favorite, handsome, polite, helpful. He assisted elderly ladies with groceries, played ball with neighborhood children. The perfect son. Nobody imagined the monster he became when doors closed. There was a day I nearly confessed everything. It was to Mrs. Johnson, the neighbor. She was different from others. No husband, lived alone, worked outside the home. Other women gossiped about her behind her back, claiming she was a lesbian, not respectable. But she was always kind to me. "Jessica, honey, you're unwell," she said one day, finding me crying behind the church. "What's happening?" I opened my mouth to speak. The words were there, on my tongue's tip. "My brother, he does things." But then I remembered my father, what he was capable of doing, not just to me, but to my mother, to anyone who interfered. And I shut down. "It's nothing, Mrs. Johnson. I'm just sad because I fought with a friend." She didn't believe me. I could see it in her eyes, but she didn't press. Years later, when everything had already transpired, she sought me out. I knew. "Jessica, I knew and I did nothing. Forgive me." I forgave her, naturally. What could she have done? In those days, nobody discussed these things. It was family business, a forbidden subject, shame carried in silence. When I turned 13, my body began changing, breasts developing, hips widening, the period that arrived and terrified me because nobody had ever explained anything. My mother gave me old rags and said, "Now you're a young lady. Be careful." Careful of what? I was already taking every precaution possible, and it helped nothing. Tony became even worse with my body's changes, as if I'd become an even more prized trophy. The nightly visits increased. Sometimes he wouldn't even wait for everyone to sleep. He'd corner me in the bathroom, pantry, any dark house corner. "You're getting attractive," he'd say. "Soon boys will start sniffing around, but you're mine, remember? Mine." I was an object, a possession. His private property, stamped and registered. And the worst part, everyone seemed to agree. My father constantly said, "Tony's the one who'll choose who you marry. He knows the town boys, knows who's decent." Little did he know that the only man who had touched me was his own son. The breaking point came on a December afternoon. It was hellishly hot, the kind that leaves everyone irritable. My father had gone to work. My mother had gone to wash clothes at the river. I was alone at home, not alone with him. "Come here, Jessica. Let's take advantage of being alone." I tried running, but he was faster. He grabbed my hair, dragged me to the room. This time I fought. For the first time in all those years, I fought. I scratched, bit, kicked. but he was stronger. Always stronger. Think you're tough now, huh? I'll have to teach you a lesson. The lesson hurt more than all previous times combined. When it ended, I was bleeding heavily. He looked at the blood on the sheet and shrugged. Clean that up before Mom gets home. But I didn't clean it. I couldn't even rise. I lay there in that red puddle, wishing to die, wanting to disappear, evaporate, cease existing. That's how my mother found me. Her scream still echoes in my ears, a scream of horror, pain, guilt. She knew. Of course she knew. She always knew. My God, my child, my God. She embraced me, rocked me like when I was a baby. Forgive your mother. Forgive me. That day something in her broke. Or perhaps it got fixed. I don't know. I just know she lifted me, took me to the bathroom, washed me, carefully, then made a bundle with our clothes. We're leaving, she said. Where to, Mom? I don't know, but we must get out of here. But we didn't leave. When we were at the door, bags in hand, my father arrived, drunk as always. He saw the scene, understood immediately. What nonsense is this? My mother tried explaining. She stuttered, cried, begged, showed the blood, the bruises. My father listened to everything in silence. Then he looked at Tony, who had appeared behind him. Is this true, son? Tony shrugged. Jessica's spinning tales, Dad. You know how women are. Must be jealous because I got a girlfriend. And my father believed him, or pretended to believe, or simply didn't care. He slapped my mother so hard she fell. Stop protecting this. Want to run away? Run. But the girl stays. Someone has to cook and clean in this house. My mother looked at me. I saw the exact moment she surrendered. On me. On herself. On life. She dropped the bag on the floor and went to the bedroom. We never spoke about that day again. Life continued. The nighttime visits persisted. My body continued being violated. My soul continued dying little by little, but something had changed. I was no longer that frightened girl who bit pillows to avoid screaming. Now I was a survivor. And survivors do whatever necessary to stay alive, even if inside they've been dead for ages. That's how it works in a house where the monster has the king's protection, where the queen is too weak to protect the princess, where screams are muffled and tears invisible. That's how a girl learns that family can be synonymous with hell, and the worst was yet to come. The year 1965 started differently. I woke on January 1st feeling my stomach churning, but it wasn't a New Year's hangover. We didn't celebrate anything at home. It was nausea, the kind that emerges from nowhere and sends you racing to the bathroom. I thought it was something I'd eaten. Little did I know that nausea would forever alter my life's course. January flew by. The nausea continued, especially mornings. My mother noticed, naturally. Mothers notice everything, even when they pretend not to see. You eating spoiled food, girl? I shook my head. We didn't have spoiled food. We barely had good food, much less spoiled. It was on a Tuesday in February when it struck me. My period was late, very late. I didn't really monitor these things. I was never regular anyway. But when I combined the lateness with the nausea, with the tender breasts, with that strange craving for pickles with peanut butter, my God. No, it couldn't be. But it was. I remember the desperation I felt sitting on the bathroom floor, counting on my fingers how many months had passed since my last period. December hadn't come. January neither. February was halfway through and nothing. 3 months. 3 months carrying that inside me. The panic was so overwhelming I vomited right there. This time it wasn't pregnancy nausea. It was pure terror. 14. Years old. I was 14 and pregnant by my own brother. How could I tell this? To whom? My mother already knew about the abuse and did nothing. My father would claim it was my fault, that I'd seduced Tony. What would he do when he discovered? I decided. To hide it. There was no other option. I started wearing the baggiest clothes I could find. My father's shirts, my mother's loose dresses. I tied rags around my belly, tightened them until it hurt. Anything to disguise the volume beginning to show, but a pregnant child's body can't be concealed for long. It was my mother who noticed first, naturally. One morning in March, she entered the room while I was changing clothes. She saw the already prominent belly, the swollen breasts, the stretch marks beginning to appear. Her face lost all color. "Jessica, my child, are you?" I started crying. It was the first time in months I'd cried genuinely, not that silent weeping. I'd learned to do so as not to disturb anyone. I sobbed so intensely I could barely breathe. "Mom, I didn't want this. I swear I didn't want to. He always—" She embraced me tightly, like she hadn't in years. We cried together there on the room's cold floor, two women shattered by the same misfortune. "We have to tell your father," she said finally. The blood froze in my veins. "No, Mom. For God's sake, he'll kill me." "And what do you want me to do, Jessica? Soon it won't be possible to hide anymore." She was right. At 4 months, it was already difficult to disguise. At 5, it would be impossible. But fear was greater than reason. "Let's wait a little longer. Just a little longer," she agreed. Poor thing. She was also terrified of my father. But she started caring for me in secret. She saved extra food, brewed herbal teas that eased the nausea, rubbed oil on my stomach to prevent excessive stretch marks. Tony continued visiting my room. It's surreal to say this, but he didn't notice anything. Men can be so oblivious when they choose to be. He did what he did and left, not noticing that my body was changing, that I moaned not from pleasure, it was never pleasure, but from pain, because everything hurt more with the baby growing inside me. April came, and with it my desperation intensified. The belly was already impossible to hide completely. I started wearing a shawl constantly, even in scorching Tennessee heat. At school, I claimed I had a back problem, that's why I walked hunched over. The teachers believed it, with trembling hands, I removed the shawl. I stood there, the 5-month belly clearly visible under the thin dress. The silence was worse than any shout. He turned red, purple, eyes bulging from their sockets. When he finally spoke, his voice emerged low, dangerous. "Whose is it?" I opened my mouth, but no sound came out. "Whose is it?" How could I answer that? "I'm asking whose child this is. John, calm down." My mother tried intervening. He slapped her without even looking. "Shut up." He turned his attention back to me. "I knew it. Always knew you were no good. Who was it? The grocery store boy? The butcher's helper? How many were there, you—" The words cut me deeper than a knife. At 14 years old, pregnant by my brother, and that's what my father saw in me. "Dad, it wasn't— I didn't— Don't call me Dad." He spat the words. "I'm not the father of a—" That's when Tony entered the room. He saw the scene, understood immediately, but instead of fear or guilt, what I saw on his face was anger. "What's going on here? Your sister—" My father pointed at me as if I were a disgusting animal. "Is pregnant." Tony looked at me. Our eyes met for a second. In that second, he knew I was going to speak. He saw it on my face, and he decided to act first. "I knew it," he said calmly. "I saw her with Mike from the gas station several times. I tried telling you, but you wouldn't. Believe me." Mike, the gas station attendant, a 16-year-old boy who barely looked at me. But just mentioning the name was enough for my father to explode completely. "That son of a— I'll kill him." And he went out the door, staggering, drunk, but determined. Tony went after him, not to stop him, but to ensure the story would stick. I was left alone with my mother. She looked at me with a mixture of pity and despair. "Why didn't you tell the truth?" "Would it have helped?" I replied, too tired to cry. "Do you think he would have believed it?" She didn't answer. We both knew the response. What happened next was an even worse hell. My father went after Mike, made a huge scandal. The boy's family was terrified, swore he had never touched me. And it was true. But my father had already spread throughout town that the gas station attendant had violated his daughter's innocence. In 2 weeks, Mike's family moved away from town. They fled from the shame, the threats, the gossip. An innocent boy paid for my brother's crime, and me? I officially became the family's shame, the lost one, the one who had dishonored the Randall name. My father wouldn't even look at me anymore. My mother cared for me in secret, but always with that look of someone carrying a burden too heavy. Tony, he became the hero, the brother who tried protecting the family's honor, the one who tried warning the father about the sister's inappropriate behavior. Disgusting. At night, he still came to my room sometimes, less than before, because now I was damaged goods, as he said. But he came, and when he came, he'd whisper in my ear, "This baby is mine. Never forget that." June passed slowly. July was even worse. My belly grew, the baby moved, and I withered inside. I stopped attending school. My father forbade it. I won't be embarrassed by you anymore. I was imprisoned at home, a prisoner carrying another prison in my womb. The only outings were to church. My father insisted I go, that everyone see my sin, my shame. The church ladies whispered, pointed, shook their heads in disapproval. I sat in the last pew, the shawl covering my now enormous belly, and prayed, not for forgiveness. What forgiveness did I need? But for strength, for an escape, for a miracle. In August, 8 months pregnant, I could barely walk. Swollen feet, aching back, the baby weighing like lead. My mother delivered babies at home. She was a midwife in her spare time when she wasn't, washing clothes or getting beaten by my father. She prepared me for the signs, taught me how to breathe, how to bear the pain. "It's going to be difficult," she said. "You're very young, very small, but we'll manage." As if she could share the childbirth pain with me, as if she could carry with me the weight of giving birth to a child who was also my nephew. It was on a September dawn that the pains began. I woke with a twinge in my back, then another in my belly, liquid running down my legs. My water had broken. I called my mother softly. She came running, assessed the situation. "It's today." The following hours were a blur of pain. I bit a cloth to avoid screaming, to avoid waking the men of the house. My mother boiled water, prepared clean rags, whispered words of encouragement. "Strength, honey. Breathe. That's it. Like that. It's almost over." But it wasn't almost over. The baby was breech, wouldn't turn. My mother was sweating as much as I was, her skilled hands trying to maneuver him. "Holy Mary, help my daughter," she prayed between procedures. It was 16 hours of labor. 16 hours that seemed like 16 years. When the baby finally decided to be born, I no longer had strength to push. "One more time, Jessica. Just one more." And it was in a last wave of pain that he was born. A boy, small but perfect. Dark hair, fair skin. His eyes, when he opened them, were green like Tony's. My mother cut the cord, cleaned the baby, wrapped him in a swaddling cloth. When she placed him on my chest, I felt something I didn't expect. Love. Pure, devastating, unconditional. That little creature was not to blame for anything. He was innocent, pure, deserved all the protection in the world. "What are you going to call him?" my mother asked. Before I could answer, the door opened. My father came in, Tony behind him. They saw the baby, saw me exhausted and bleeding on. "The bed. It's a boy," my father stated. A shadow of something, pride, passed over his face. It quickly disappeared. "Doesn't matter. A son is always a son." But Tony approached. He looked at the baby, saw the green eyes, the jaw already showing signs of being square like his. He smiled. "The kid's handsome," he said. And for a moment, a brief moment, I saw in his eyes something like remorse, guilt. No, it was possessiveness, twisted pride. That baby was living proof of his power over me. "He'll be called Charles," my father decided. "Charles, a proper man's name. Maybe he won't take after his mother." Charles. My son had a name now, Charles Randall. No father on the record because officially nobody knew who it was. Mike had been gone for months, so they couldn't put his name. It was just mine. In the days that followed, the house was strange. My father pretended the baby didn't exist. My mother cared for us both as best she could. And Tony, he prowled. He'd watch the baby nurse, change diapers, sleep. Sometimes he tried holding him, but I wouldn't let him. My whole body tensed when he came near. "He's my son too," he said once, softly when we were alone. "No," I answered with all the firmness I could muster. "He's mine, only mine." But I knew it wasn't true. In that house, in that family, nothing was just mine. Not my body, not my son, not my life. The milk was slow to come in. Charles cried with hunger. I cried with desperation. My mother made teas, massages, but it seemed my body refused to nourish that child who came from so much suffering. It was Mrs. Johnson, the neighbor, who saved the situation. She appeared with a can of formula, said it was left over from her grandchildren. A lie, of course. She had bought it, but she presented it in a way that my father couldn't refuse without seeming worse than he already was. "Accept it, John. It's for the child. He's not to blame for anything." And so Charles survived his first months. Formula donated by the neighbor, clothes that mysteriously appeared at the door. A blanket here, a pacifier there. The town knew, everyone knew, and some, few, tried helping as they could. But the situation at home only worsened. My father drank. More, hit more. My mother visibly withered away. And Tony started making plans. "When the kid grows up, he'll be just like me," he'd say. "I'll teach him everything. He'll be my partner, my blood." The terror I felt hearing that was worse than all the violence I had suffered. My son. He wanted to turn my son into a monster like him. No, no way. I would die before letting that happen. And that's when I started planning our escape. Alone at 15 years old with a baby of a few months. No money, nowhere to go. But I had to try. For Charles, for the innocent child who deserved a chance to be different, to be better, to be free. The problem was how to escape from a prison where your jailers sleep in the next room. How to protect a child when you yourself are still a child. How to find salvation when the whole world has turned its back on you. The answer would come in the most unexpected way possible, and it would change our lives forever. But I'll tell you that later. The plan to run away kept hammering in my head day and night. Charles was already 3 months old, drinking well from the bottle, sleeping almost the whole night. But how was a 15-year-old girl, without a penny to her name, going to manage to run away with a baby? Where to go? With what money? It was December when I gathered courage for my first attempt. My father had gone to work. Tony had gone to play basketball. My mother was in the backyard hanging clothes. I took Charles. I turned slowly. Charles pressed against my chest. I was taking the baby for some fresh air. The slap came before I finished the sentence. I fell sitting on the sidewalk, protecting Charles with my body. He started screaming, frightened, lying. "Thought you were going to run away with the bastard." He dragged me back to the house by my hair, locked the door, took the key. From that day on, I became an official prisoner. I couldn't even go to the backyard without supervision. January 1966 came hot and suffocating. Charles was growing, looking more like Tony each day. The same green eyes, the same square jaw. He was my blessing and my curse. I loved that child more than my own life, but each familiar trait was a reminder of the horror I had lived through. Tony began taking more interest in the boy. He wanted to hold him, make faces, play. I was disgusted but couldn't always prevent it. My father supported it. Let the uncle care for his nephew. It's good to have a male figure around. Male figure. If he only knew what kind of figure that was. One afternoon, I overheard Tony talking with a friend. When the kid grows up, he'll be my buddy. I'll teach him everything I know. Women, booze, fun. He'll be a real man, not one raised by a woman. I froze. He wasn't just talking about teaching Charles to play ball or fish. He was talking about turning my son into another predator, another monster. No, never. I would rather die, would rather kill than let that happen. It was on a February night that I tried again. This time, I was smarter. I waited for everyone to fall into deep sleep. I took the kitchen knife, forced the window of the room slowly without making noise. I passed Charles. Through first, then squeezed myself through the opening. I was almost reaching the street when the neighbor's dog started barking. It woke up the whole neighborhood, lights turning on, people looking. My father appeared at the door in his underwear and slippers, furious. Script, analysis tone, and style intimate confessional. First-person narrative with the warmth of a grandmother, sharing her deepest secrets, conversational yet profound. YouTube storytelling format that builds trust with the audience. Emotional authenticity. Raw honesty balanced with protective love for family, chronological storytelling. Spans decades, showing transformation from victim to survivor to protector, emotional arc and climax opening. Quiet tension, building around father's declining health rising action. Father's death creates opportunity for escape, multiple climaxes, the escape itself, peak. Tension. Finding safety and new family, with Mr. Robert Charles's successful life milestones. Resolution, present-day reflection on choices made and secrets. Kept key characters, maintained exactly. Jessica Randall, Smith, narrator, survivor, protective. Mother Charles. Her son, the miracle she protects, Tony, the abusive brother, implied threat. John Randall, the father whose death enables escape. Mr. Robert, surrogate father figure and protector Mrs. Wilson, the mayor's wife who provides the escape. Root Rosie, loyal friend and accomplice, enhanced. Script October arrived with an undercurrent of change. My father had grown peculiar, withdrawn, consuming less alcohol than usual. Initially, I dismissed it as imagination, but my mother sensed it too. John's behaving strangely, she mentioned while washing dishes. Exhausted, no hunger. The observation rang true. This man who had once embodied raw power, intimidating and savage, appeared to be deteriorating. His skin had taken on a sickly yellow hue, his eyes had sunken deep, yet nobody dared acknowledge it. In our household, expressing concern meant displaying weakness. Everything transformed on that October morning. I awakened to piercing screams echoing from my parents' bedroom. I rushed there, clutching Charles tightly. My father lay sprawled across the floor, his body convulsing violently, foam spilling from his mouth, every muscle rigid with seizure. My mother knelt beside him, desperately trying to steady his trembling form. "Get help," she commanded. Tony materialized, terror etched across his features. For the first time in my existence, I witnessed genuine fear flickering in his eyes. He sprinted to summon the pharmacist, the closest thing to medical expertise our town possessed. But salvation never arrived. By the time Mr. Thompson appeared with his weathered medicine bag, my father had ceased foaming, ceased moving, ceased breathing entirely. "Heart attack," the pharmacist pronounced. Grimly. "Massive. Nothing could have been done." Dead. My father, deceased. The man who had terrorized my entire existence, who had permitted unspeakable abuse, who had branded me worthless, lay motionless on the bedroom floor in his pajamas and worn slippers. I expected to feel something, grief, relief, anything substantial. Instead, only emptiness consumed me. A vast, echoing void, as though a crushing weight I'd carried for years had suddenly vanished, leaving me uncertain how to walk without its familiar burden. The wake commenced that same afternoon. In small, sweltering towns, you cannot delay. Our house overflowed with visitors, distant relatives I'd never encountered, drinking companions from the tavern, fellow workers from the plant. All mourning, all pretending that John Randall had been a decent man. Strict but fair, they proclaimed, devoted to his family, an honest laborer. Lies, but lies everyone preferred believing. Tony assumed the role of household patriarch overnight. He accepted condolences, orchestrated the funeral arrangements, made every decision. I observed the pride radiating from his face as he claimed his father's position. The new authority, the new proprietor. At the Z cemetery, watching the coffin descend into earth, realization struck me. My father's death meant one thing: opportunity. Perhaps the only chance I would ever receive. The man who had imprisoned me monitored my every move, threatened murder if I attempted escape, no longer existed. I glanced at Tony across the grave. He supported my mother, performing the devoted son, but his eyes found mine. Amid the mourning solemnity, the entire theatrical display, he smiled. A subtle, discreet expression, meant exclusively for me. That smile conveyed everything. Now I command. Now you belong to me completely. But he remained ignorant, oblivious that at that precise moment, watching dirt cascade onto my father's coffin, I was orchestrating my liberation. Our liberation, mine and Charles's. My father's death wasn't tragedy, it was divine intervention, the miracle I had prayed for endlessly. The initial days following the funeral were chaotic. Visitors streaming in and out, delivering food, offering sympathy. My mother wandered through our house like a lost spirit, bewildered without her husband's commands. Tony strutted about, playing family head, handling inheritance paperwork, signing documents. But I wasn't squandering time. While they managed death's bureaucracy, I planned for life. Rosie appeared on the third day with her characteristic disregard for convention. So, seizing this opportunity, I gazed at Charles playing on the floor, 14 months old already, walking on those unsteady little legs, babbling random words. My beautiful, intelligent boy deserved better than this cursed house. I am, but I must be strategic. When? Soon, before he consolidates complete control. The strategy was straightforward. Await the will reading, claim my inheritance, being a daughter entitled me to something, then disappear. Rosie had already contacted a cousin in New York who rented rooms to young women. Not ideal, but a beginning. The problem emerged when the lawyer read the will. Yes, my father had composed one, and naturally he bequeathed everything to his male heir. Everything, the house, land, savings. For my mother and me, merely the right to reside there as long as Tony permitted. That's unjust. My mother finally found courage to protest. The lawyer shrugged indifferently. The law permits it. Your husband could distribute his assets as he chose. I witnessed Tony's triumphant smile. Now it was official. He owned everything. Everyone. Me. That night, lying in bed with Charles, sleeping peacefully beside me, desperation crashed over me like a wave. Without money, how could I escape? The bus ticket to New York was expensive. I needed travel provisions, formula for Charles, accommodation, upon arrival. That's when I remembered Mrs. Wilson, the mayor's wife. She had offered assistance if needed. Was her offer still valid? The following day, I fabricated needing pharmacy items for Charles. A lie. But my mother permitted my departure. She was too lost without her husband to question anything. I hurried to the mayor's residence, an impressive mansion with manicured gardens and high fencing. I knocked at the gate, heart hammering. What if she refused to see me? What if she'd reconsidered? Her offer, but she appeared, beautiful as always in a silk dress, gentle smile brightening her features. Jessica, she became thoughtful. After what seemed eternal, she spoke. I can do better than that. I have a friend in Washington, D.C., owner of a family boarding house. She needs kitchen help, offers room and board. It's modest, but honest work and a safe place. Washington, D.C., the nation's capital, far enough from Oak Ridge to never encounter Tony again. My heart raced with hope. I accept. I'll accept anything. I'll call her today, and the ticket? Consider it a gift. I nearly wept with gratitude. But Mrs. Wilson wasn't finished. There's one condition, Jessica. You leave and never return. Don't write. Don't send news. Sever all contact. It's for your safety and mine. My husband cannot know I helped. Do you understand? I understood perfectly. The mayor wouldn't appreciate knowing his wife aided the town's fallen girl in escaping. It could tarnish the family's reputation. I promise. No one will ever know. I departed with a lighter heart than I'd felt in years. I had a plan, help, hope. I simply needed to act swiftly before Tony noticed anything. The following days involved careful preparation. I gathered essentials, clothes for Charles, documents, the small amount of money I'd hidden. Everything fit in one travel bag, an entire life in one bag. Rosie assisted however possible. She discovered bus schedules, optimal routes, stop locations. She taught me phone booth usage, how to request information, basic things I'd never needed to know. It's different in big cities, she explained. You must be smart, not trust just anyone. The departure date arrived, November 3rd, 1966. The bus left at 4 a.m. Mrs. Wilson sent ticket money through Rosie, along with a recommendation letter for her Washington friend. The night before, I barely slept, continuously gazing at Charles, memorizing every detail. Light brown hair, upturned nose, chubby little hands. My son, my treasure, who would discover the world beyond those four walls. At 3 a.m., I rose slowly. I dressed Charles while he slumbered, grabbed the bag, made the sign of the cross. The house was silent, my mother snoring softly in her room. Tony had gone out. Friday was his night at the town brothel. I tiptoed through the living room. Each floorboard creak sounded like thunder. Charles stirred in my arms, mumbled. I hushed him gently, rocking. I was nearly at the door when I heard, "It really leaving?" I froze, turned slowly. My mother stood at the kitchen doorway, old nightgown, disheveled hair, eyes red from weeping. "Mom, I know. I've always known everything." Her voice was a broken whisper. "But I never had the courage. Your father. I was afraid. Why didn't you protect me?" The question escaped before I could contain it. Years of pain in one sentence. She lowered her head. "Because I'm weak. Always have been. But you're not. You're strong, Jessica, stronger than I'll ever be." We stared at each other in the darkness. Mother and daughter, two opposite destinies. "Go," she finally whispered. "Go and don't look back. Care for that boy. Give him the life you deserve." I approached, kissed her wrinkled face, skin smelling of lye soap, tasting of tears. "Goodbye, Mom. Goodbye, my daughter." I exited without looking back. The dawn air was frigid, cutting. Charles nestled against my chest, returning to sleep. I walked rapidly through deserted streets. Each step carried me further from that house, that life, that nightmare. The bus station was small, poorly illuminated. Rosie was already there, faithful. To the end? I thought you weren't coming anymore. I almost didn't. My mother, she knows. She always knew. Rosie nodded. Between women, some things don't need saying. The bus arrived, puffing and releasing black smoke. The driver, a pot-bellied elderly man, took my ticket without looking. Washington, huh? Long journey. 18 hours if we don't break down. 18 hours. Nearly a full day traveling away from hell, approaching. Who knew what? But anything was better than remaining. I climbed the steps with difficulty, balancing Charles and the bag. The bus was nearly empty, half a dozen passengers sleeping, heads bobbing to the road's rhythm. I selected a rear seat near the window. I settled Charles, now awake and observing everything with infant curiosity. Rosie climbed up to say farewell. Take care of him and yourself. I will. When you arrive, forget this place, forget everything, start fresh. Like it's that simple. She squeezed my hand. It's not simple, but it's necessary. You deserve happiness, Jessica. Both of you do. The driver honked. Let's go. I've got a schedule to maintain. Rosie rushed down, waving from the sidewalk as the bus started. I waved back, eyes burning with unshed tears. The bus accelerated, leaving behind familiar small houses, the church where I'd suffered silently, the cemetery where my father was rotting, the square where I'd never played, Oak Ridge disappearing into darkness, becoming memory, becoming past. Charles pointed at the window, amazed by lights passing swiftly. Look, Mama, look. Yes, my son, we're going far, far away. He clapped his hands, delighted with the adventure, so small, so innocent. He had no idea of the hell we were abandoning, of the monster sleeping in that house who would awaken in hours to discover his prey had escaped. I imagined Tony's face upon finding the empty room, the anger, hatred, but also relief. Now he wouldn't need to share inheritance or support his sister's child. Yes, he'd be furious initially, but then he'd find another victim. Men like him always do. The town was full of defenseless girls, passive fathers, weak mothers, but I was no longer among them. The road stretched ahead, a ribbon of asphalt cutting through fields. The sun began rising, painting the sky pink and orange. Charles slept, in my lap, breathing softly, little hand clutching my blouse. 18 hours. 18 hours to leave Jessica Randall behind and birth another person. Someone without a past, without trauma, without fear. Someone who could start over. I rested my head against the window, watching the landscape transform. Scattered fields. Impoverished little towns. Isolated gas stations. The deep South passing before my eyes. So vast, so full of possibilities. In Washington, nobody knew me. Nobody knew my story. I could invent anything: war widow, country girl seeking fortune, ordinary single mother, anything but the truth. The truth would remain buried in Oak Ridge alongside my father, alongside my innocence, alongside the girl I was and would never be again. Charles stirred, mumbled. I offered him my breast. I still nursed, more for comfort than hunger. He suckled eagerly, green eyes gazing at me with absolute trust, green like his father's, but that no longer mattered. They were simply eyes, beautiful eyes of my beautiful son who would grow up free, happy, never knowing his origins. The bus swayed, engine rumbled, hours passed, brief stops in small towns whose names I didn't recognize, people boarding and departing, lives intersecting momentarily. At one stop, I disembarked to use the restroom. A woman alone with a baby always attracts attention. An elderly lady offered to hold Charles while I went. Thank you, but I'll take him with me. Never, never again. Would I leave him alone with strangers? Never again would I trust blindly. I had learned the hardest way that danger lurks where you least expect it. Back on the bus, I ate lunch Rosie had prepared. Sandwich, banana, water in a small bottle. Simple food, but tasting of freedom. Afternoon fell. Night arrived. Charles. Slept most of the journey, waking only to nurse or when the bus shook excessively. I couldn't sleep. Each mile was victory. Each town passed was relief. Finally, nearly midnight, the driver announced, "Next stop, Washington, D.C. bus station. Those departing, gather your belongings." Washington. We had arrived. I peered out the window at city lights, large concrete. Blocks illuminated, wide streets. A completely different world from what I knew. I took a deep breath. The new life began now. Without looking back, as Rosie advised. Without fear, as my mother never managed. Just Charles and me against the world. The bus stopped. I disembarked on wobbly legs, body aching from the journey. Charles awakened with the movement, looking around startled by so much light, so much noise. "It's okay, my love. We've arrived." The bus station was enormous compared to Oak Ridge's. People everywhere, buses arriving and departing, vendors shouting. I felt lost but also invisible. Perfect. Exactly what I needed to disappear into the crowd. I found a public phone, dialed the number Mrs. Wilson had given me. A female voice answered. "Good Hope Boarding House. Hello, is this Mrs. Martha? Mrs. Wilson sent me." "Jessica." That first night in Washington, lying in the strange bed with Charles sleeping peacefully in the crib beside me, I finally allowed myself to cry. Cry with relief, with fear, with hope. For everything I had lived and everything yet to live. Outside, the city slept. Planned city, modern, full of promises. Where nobody knew me, where my past didn't exist, where I could be anyone. I chose to be Jessica Smith, common name without history. Young widow whose husband died in a work accident. One among thousands of migrants arriving daily in the capital seeking better lives. And it was true in a way. I was migrating. I was seeking a better life. Just not for a dead husband. The past remained in Oak Ridge. The future began there, in that cramped little room, in that strange city, with my son in my arms and freedom within reach. It wouldn't be easy, but it would be ours. And that was enough. Washington was my salvation and my challenge. The first months at Mrs. Martha's boarding house were difficult, but differently. It wasn't the terror from before. It was the hardship of honest work, heavy routine, but free routine. I'd wake at 5 a.m., leave Charles sleeping, Mrs. Martha cared for him while I worked, and go to the kitchen. Breakfast for 15 guests was no joke. Toast, fried eggs, freshly brewed coffee. Then cleaning everything, preparing lunch, beans, rice, meat, cleaning again, preparing dinner. Between tasks, I'd run to nurse Charles, change diapers, give him attention. But you know what? It was good. Exhausting, sweaty, but mine. Nobody touched me without permission. Nobody invaded my room. Nobody called me worthless. I was just Jessica, the cook, the quiet but hard-working young woman. Charles grew strong. At a year and a half, he was already running around the boarding house playing with guests. He was the place's joy. Mrs. Martha melted for him. The chambermaids competed to play with him. For the first time, my son had family. Odd, improvised, but family. 67 flew by. I saved every penny. The dream was leaving the boarding house, renting a small place just for us, however tiny, but ours, where I could raise Charles my way, away from curious looks, uncomfortable questions. It was in 1968 that my life took another turn. A new guest appeared at the boarding house. Mr. Robert, a retired civil servant, recent widower, A man around 60, educated, quiet. He'd stay for weeks, then disappear, then return. He noticed Charles. It was hard not to notice, a 2-year-old boy, smart, talkative, green eyes that drew attention. He started bringing small gifts, toy car here, little book there. I thanked him but kept my distance. Men who seemed too kind always made me wary. But Mr. Robert was different. He didn't try anything. He just talked, told stories, played with Charles. Gradually, I lowered my guard. He spoke about his wife who died of cancer, about children living far away, about the loneliness weighing on him. "You remind me of my daughter," he said one day. "The same strength, same determination." One afternoon, Charles fell while playing and scraped his knee. He cried so much, nothing consoled him. Mr. Robert appeared with a first aid kit. "I was an army medic," he explained, cleaning the wound. "I know how to handle this." While he tended to Charles, talking to distract him, singing a silly little song, something changed in me. I saw there not a dangerous man, but a grandfather, someone who also needed family. The friendship grew slowly. He'd come to the kitchen, help peel potatoes while we talked. He discussed Kennedy's era, the civil rights movement, hopes for a new country. I listened, learned, dreamed. One day he made the proposal. "Jessica, I have a house in Georgetown. It's been empty since my wife died. Too big for me alone. How about you and Charles living there? It's not charity. You'd care for the house cook, and I'd pay fair wages." My heart raced. A house? Leave the boarding house? It seemed too good to be true. "But what will people say?" he laughed. "Let them say what they want. I'm too old to care about gossip. You need a house. I need company. It's business, not romance." I thought long and hard. I spoke with Mrs. Martha, who approved immediately. "Robert is a decent man, Jessica. I've never seen him disrespect anyone." I accepted. In March 1969, we moved to his house, a simple but spacious townhouse. 3 bedrooms, yard, everything neat. Charles got his own room for the first time in his life. The routine was peaceful. I cared for the house, prepared meals. Mr. Robert left early, returned late afternoon. We'd talk at dinner, then each to our own corner. Mutual respect, healthy distance. But children don't know these boundaries. Charles adopted Mr. Robert as his grandfather. "Grandpa Rob," he called him. He followed the old man around the house, asked for stories, showed drawings, and Mr. Robert, bless him, melted completely. He taught Charles to ride a bicycle, took him to the park for the first time, explained about passing planes. "Look there, Charlie. That big one is a Boeing." Seeing the two together, my heart squeezed. This is what family should be. Affection without malice, care without ulterior motives. Everything missing from my childhood, my son was receiving. Brought changes. Mr. Robert fell ill, heart problems. I started caring for him more closely. Medicine at proper times, special diet, enforced rest. He complained but obeyed. "You're worse than a sergeant," he joked. "It's for your own good." No. That's why I tolerate it. On an afternoon at the hospital, after a bigger scare, he held my hand. "Jessica, I need to ask you something. If something happens to me, don't talk like that. Listen, if it happens, I want you to keep the house, you and Charles. I've already arranged the papers," I protested. It was too much. I couldn't accept, but, he insisted. "I don't have anyone, Jessica. The children barely call. You and Charles are my family now. Let me care for you like you care for me." I cried for the first time in years, cried with gratitude. Not for money or the house, but for the gesture. Someone seeing me as a person, not a thing. Someone wanting to protect me, not use me. Mr. Robert recovered, but became more fragile. I started sleeping in the adjacent room to hear if he needed anything. Charles slept between us, in my room when afraid, in his when wanting a story. In 1971, I enrolled Charles in kindergarten. 5 years old, smart as could be, blue uniform, little backpack, gap-toothed smile. My pride, my miracle. "Mom, why don't I have a dad?" he asked one day out of nowhere. I froze. I knew the question would come, but I wasn't prepared. "Your dad died, son, when you were a baby." "How did he die?" "Work accident." "Was he nice?" I took a deep breath. Yes, he was. A lie. But some lies are necessary. Some truths kill. Charles accepted the explanation for now. But I knew one day I'd have to tell more, make up details, create memories. Anything but the truth. 72 came with the presidential election. The whole country stopped to watch. Mr. Robert bought a new color TV, total luxury. We watched all coverage together, me, him, Charles, some neighbors. When Nixon won re-election, Charles painted his face red, white, and blue, ran down the street with other children. Normal, happy, free, watching. Him there, celebrating with little friends. I thought of Oak Ridge. Did it still exist? Was Tony still living there? Was my mother alive? I blocked the thoughts that life had died. I was another person now. Jessica Smith, cook, single mother, Washington resident. The past didn't exist, but sometimes in sleepless dawns, it returned in nightmares where Tony found me, where he took Charles from me, where everything started again. I'd wake in cold sweat, run to Charles's room, check if he was there, safe, sleeping peacefully. In 1973, Charles turned 7. Mr. Robert organized a party, cake, balloons, kids from the whole street. I took photos with the camera he'd given, me as a gift. Frozen moments of improbable happiness. That year, something changed between me and Mr. Robert. It wasn't romance. Neither I wanted it, nor did he try. It was something deeper. Complicity. Real family built day by day in mutual care and affection without demands. He worsened in winter. Hospitalization after hospitalization. I divided myself between hospital and home, between caring for him and for Charles. Neighbors helped, teachers understood, a support network I'd never had before. One night at the hospital, he was too weak to speak loudly. He whispered, "Jessica, you were the daughter I always wanted to have. Charles, the grandson I never met. Thank you." "Thank you," I replied, holding his hand, "for everything." He died in September. Peaceful, sleeping, as he deserved. The funeral was simple. His children appeared, 2 men in suits with unfriendly faces. They questioned everything. Who I was, what I was doing there, why their father left the house. That's when I met Mrs. Neely, the neighbor next door, tough lady from New Orleans, respected community elder. She saw my distress, offered help. "Girl, you're carrying something heavy. I can see it in your eyes. Want to talk?" I refused at first. Then, on a sleepless night, I knocked on her door. We drank coffee, talked. I didn't tell everything. I never told everything. But I spoke about loneliness, fear, nightmares. She listened, nodded, understood. "Everyone has ghosts, child. The secret is not letting them control us." We became friends. She watched Charles when I worked late. I helped at her community gatherings. Community belonging, things I'd never had in Oak Ridge. Charles loved the stories she told, saints, legends, myths. He learned about culture, religion, respect for differences. He grew open-minded, big-hearted. "This boy will go far," Mrs. Neely prophesied. "He has his own light." I hoped it was true, for him to go far indeed, far from any shadow of the past, from any mark of the violence that created him. In 1975, Charles turned 9, preteen, questioner, curious about everything. The questions about his father returned, more elaborate. What kind of work did he do? Construction. He helped build Washington. Why aren't there any photos of him? We lost everything in a move. How did you two meet? Each question a new lie. Each lie another brick in the wall that protected him from the truth. I started writing. At night, after Charles was asleep, I put memories on paper, not to publish, God forbid, but to organize, to ensure I'd never forget, even wanting to. Oak Ridge, Tony, the basement, the escape, all there in crooked letters, notebook hidden in the back of the drawer. One day, I thought, when I die, someone will find it, read it, understand. But not Charles. Never Charles. 76 brought real adolescence, voice changing, pimples on face, interest in girls. Normal, healthy, everything an adolescent should be. But the eyes, those damn green eyes, each year that passed, more like Tony's. Sometimes at a specific angle, in a particular expression, I saw the monster in my angel. I'd take a deep breath,